Welcome to Orchestrating Outcomes, a new video series brought to you by TraceLink that explores the challenges and opportunities of supply chain digitalization. We feature insights from industry leaders across the pharmaceutical supply chain. My name is Henry Ames, and I'm responsible for the logistics orchestration here at TraceLink. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jon Chapman. Jon currently serves as the Vice President of Healthcare at Kuehne+Nagel. I've known Jon for many, many years, so thank you for joining today, Jon. What I find interesting about your background is that prior to K&N, you spent over a decade in various supply chain roles at AstraZeneca. Hence, you bring a valuable perspective, having seen the broad pharmaceutical supply chain from both the customer and now many years as a leading service provider. And frankly, I've known a number of other individuals at K&N with similar backgrounds. So that's interesting that your organization obviously values the perspective from both the customer and the service provider side of things. Could you begin by giving us a little bit about your background, a brief introduction about your history in the industry, a little bit about Kuehne+Nagel and your current roles, responsibilities?
So hello, Henry. It's great to be with you. It's great to be part of this TraceLink series. I'm really proud to be here to be representing Kuehne+Nagel, giving you some insights into the industry and the challenges that we've got. So myself, I was trained as an engineer all of those years ago. That was even before the two of us met. And yes, as you said, I spent the early part of my career working within Zeneca and AstraZeneca, within the healthcare, the pharmaceutical industry in the UK. Within AZ, I served roles within manufacturing, within production, within procurement, and most latterly, I worked within the logistics part of AstraZeneca. As you can imagine, that was where I met and I came across Kuehne+Nagel. I started working with Kuehne+Nagel as my supplier. I grew to really respect everything that Kuehne+Nagel was doing, the way that they were working. And I suppose you would say the rest is history, that my previous supplier became my employer. And I moved to the headquarters of Kuehne+Nagel in Schindellegi in Switzerland, first of all, to lead the development of the air logistic pharmaceutical product, as it was at the time, called KN Pharma Chain. And subsequently, I've taken over, as you said, the overall lead for the healthcare operation and the development and the rollout of that original air logistics product to all of the modes of transport and contract logistics under the banner of Health Chain. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to providing my insights over the next period.
Well, that's so helpful. Thank you. And we're really thrilled to have you. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. When I think about the global life sciences vertical, I mean, obviously it's a unique vertical, because I know K&N, of course, supports other verticals, whether it's automotive or aerospace and IT services. But healthcare is unique because there's an element of being somewhat recession resistant. You know, obviously it's higher growth. You've got aging populations, so they're favorable demographics. Arguably higher margins, but barriers to entry as well in terms of investments required around validation, qualification, and various services needed to meet the unique demands of the healthcare and life sciences vertical. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the more strategic investments that K&N is making in supporting sort of the expanding segment of healthcare and life sciences?
It would be a pleasure to, Henry. So first of all, I should say that Kuehne+Nagel, like many companies, has a strategy for the next period. Specifically, that is called Roadmap 2026, and then moving forward to a vision of 2030. Our investments within healthcare are very much in line with the cornerstones of that vision and that roadmap and that strategy. So first of all, we're prioritizing customer experience. What is it that we need to do to get closer to the customer? And if we're thinking healthcare, that could be closer to the patient as well. So everything that we do has got that underpin with customer experience, patient centricity. If we're thinking about healthcare and the globality, as you mentioned, the aging population, we need to be thinking of service offerings and capability and infrastructure which allows us to get those more temperature sensitive shipments, those more valuable shipments, if we're thinking about things like personalized medication, to all corners and all parts of the world. So we are thinking, and we continue to build in the developing parts of the world in terms of new assets, new capability. We are all members of the human race. We all live on the planet. We are all becoming more and more environmentally conscious. So one of the other cornerstones of what we do within healthcare and what we're doing within Kuehne+Nagel is in the area of ESG. So in terms of environment, social and governance, I would say specifically we're looking there in terms of how can we make our healthcare logistics solutions more sustainable, more environmentally friendly. So we're looking at things like reducing the packaging. We're looking at things like consolidating shipments. We're looking at things like how can we partner with other parties to mean that the footprint of the overall business that we do is reduced from what it was previously. And then I think the latter area in terms of where we're investing is in line with everything that's going on in terms of technology and the world. So whether that be cloud infrastructure, whether that be artificial intelligence, whether that be digital twins, there's an awful lot of investment that we've got to move our historical on-premise IT into the cloud to be able to have a cloud native way of working that is an enabler to the AI of the future.
Well, thank you. You touched on so many different topics on that answer. I want to drill down in a few of them, but one that first comes to mind is just this idea of ESG. And when I think about the healthcare industry and health providers, of course, you have that Hippocratic oath, right? First and foremost, do no harm. So I know that when you look out across your customers, I'm sure they're thinking about that very same thing, because that's really it's sort of the ethos of why they exist in the first place, trying to focus on the patient. When you and I have talked, and we just even recently in preparation for this interview, looking at the future of healthcare logistics, I know you've talked about the importance of moving closer to the patient. You've talked about greater demands on optimizing cost, services, and quality. Could you share a little bit about sort of, what are the overarching views? Where do you see the industry sort of moving from a high level perspective? Help us set the stage.
So thank you again, Henry. I think as you've said there, the primary thing that we are conscious of, and what could you say, the primary driver behind everything we do is the patient. We know that the patient is the end consumer, the end user of all of the medications, of all of the healthcare products that we are handling. So the overarching sort of strategy for me, first of all, is to get closer to the patient, to help educate all of ourselves individually and the teams within Kuehne+Nagel in terms of this patient centricity. I think the next part to be thinking about and to be building on is, we know that, let's say, science is developing, science is continually identifying more products, it's starting to be able to treat those diseases that previously were untreatable. Those products tend to be of higher value. They tend to be more sensitive. So another aim that we've got to be able to do is to be handling those shipments that are really, really temperature sensitive in a truly compliant way. I would say then another element is around personalized medication. What does that mean? That it means that the consignments, the shipments that we're moving they're getting smaller, and the locations that we need to deliver them to are getting more varied. So we need to be thinking about ways of, first of all, managing the shipment and how do we get it to all of these locations all over the world, which could be an individual person's house, it could be a hospital, it could be a doctor's clinic. And then secondly, how do we manage the data that allows that shipment to be handled perfectly? And I think, secondly, we know that there are the cost pressures. We're seeing that in terms of the inflationary pressures that there are within the world at the minute. So we must be making sure that whatever services we provide are are cost effective. So that requires things like standardization. It requires things like simplification. And then I think the last thing that you said is we have to be conscious with the environment. So the sustainability is key. Whatever we offer has to be sustainable. The print that leaves, the legacy that leaves on the planet, we've got to over time reduce that to get to a really truly carbon neutral perspective.
I know it's not lost on you, and the many years I spent in the cold chain industry, you and I have talked many times around the importance of patient safety, product quality, and I know that's at the core of what Kuehne+Nagel is focused on. And ensuring product quality, patient safety starts with looking at that environmental condition data, and you mentioned it yourself. Thinking about increasing demands around the data, the information, visibility of shipments themselves. Could we dig a little bit into sort of broader digitalization topics? I know you talked about the cloud infrastructure that K&N is focused on. Maybe we should talk a little bit about some of the information flows around the movement of goods, perhaps even preceding, accompanying, or maybe even following the movement of goods.
I think you will know, because it's one of the first times that we met, Henry, that digitization, that data, that technology is something that I'm passionately interested and proud that Kuehne+Nagel is leading the way. So what would I say, first of all, in terms of digitization, where we are really actively involved, and I feel is really, really important, is around making sure that we have the real-time data associated with that shipment, associated with that piece moving. So we are dealing and we are working with a number of IoT sensor providers in order to make sure that we've got that real-time data as the shipment moves from the origin to the destination. Clearly, the most important data that we will have there will be around temperature and position. But if the products are sensitive for other things, such as vibration or shock, obviously we know technology-wise these days that we can easily get all of that information as well. So I think, first of all, we need to have the data. And then the second thing is, how do we represent that data in a way that can be used by all of the parties within the supply chain, such that they can do what they need to do with it? So what would I say, if we're thinking, first of all, from a Kuehne+Nagel perspective, we are expected by our customers to handle that shipment from the beginning to end, origin to destination, perfectly. So we are using that data to keep a track, to keep a watch on the shipment through very much control tower systems, in terms of, is it moving on time? Is it moving within temperature? Is it moving to the right quality? And our hypercare teams are then able to intervene in the event that something is going wrong, to heal that abnormality before it becomes critical. And then if I'm thinking about our customers, whether they be the healthcare shippers or whether they be the distributors or the pharmacies further down the line, they need the information around inventory, around order management, in order to plan at the origin what shipments are moving in, and then at the destination, have we got the right level of inventory to serve the patients, to serve the needs of the hospitals or the clinics, etc. So how can we use that, let's say the core data in the middle, to provide data to the customer, to the shipper, in order that they know where their products are, and then to the users to ensure that they have the information that they need to make sure that the patients get their medication. And I think the final thing to say is, in terms of all of this, the data's got to be of the right quality. It's got to be provided in real time in order that it can be actionable by those parties.
You make it sound so simple, but I know from experience it's not. We've talked about the patient centricity and the focus on patient safety, product quality. We've talked about the increasing higher value of these goods, the importance of these goods in terms of maintaining product quality, purity, efficacy, potency. I know this is a core element of where K&N is focused. Could you share maybe some thoughts around where some of your more strategic customers are forcing or asking for investments? You mentioned it yourself, the real-time tracking, temperature data, direct connections, enabling real-time information flows. inventory optimization, inventory visibility. Maybe could you share some examples of how K&N is helping customers to address some of these very complex issues?
Of course, it would be my pleasure, Henry. So first of all, full visibility at piece level. So we are working with a number of customers, and we're working with a number of technology providers in order to be able to identify the right technology with the appropriate capability and at the right cost to allow full global visibility of all of the pieces that are moving around and about the supply chain in the world. I think another thing that is relevant to bring up here, and yes, we know there are a small number of customers that are already doing it, but zero touch release. How can we use all of the data that we have out there? How can we make sure that we've got a qualified and a validated computer system with the right level of logic, such that on receipt at the destination, whether that be the hospital, the distributor, or another warehouse, we can immediately download wirelessly and without touch the temperature data or any other data that is needed to confirm that that product was handled correctly in transit, in order that there isn't a paper file that needs to be printed out, there isn't a download that needs to be done, but there can be an immediate comparison with the product stability data to say, good, that shipment is good to go. It's now zero touch, able to move forward. And I would say the second or the final point to raise is around how can we use all of the data that we've got from past shipments, from the shipments that we've completed. How can we consolidate that data? How can we use the metadata or the data behind the actual shipment data in order to identify which are the shipments that have gone well, which are the shipments that have not gone so well, which are the hotspots in terms of the good performance or the not so good performance, in order that when we are planning future shipments, we can plan those perfectly based upon what we know has actually happened previously. So the words that I've used, I don't know if it works for you, but the analogy that I have is lemmings jumping off the cliff. That we know pharmaceutical shipments they're repeated regularly, whether that be once a week or whether that be once a month. How can we use the data to identify those repeating issues so that, in my analogy, there are no more lemmings going off the cliff when the next shipment moves?
I get it. Continuous process improvement and driving real stability and consistency in terms of those service levels. We've talked, in preparation for today, we've talked about digital connectivity, and you told me yourself, you said digital connectivity, it's really an enabler. It helps support specific business goals, but those business goals ultimately need to be defined. And I know in your world, there's a lot of focus on ensuring that you meet or exceed the customer's expectations, and I'm sure that's very well documented in technical quality agreements. Could you share with us maybe sort of, what are the KPIs that are of great importance? You talked about some of them already. I know cost and efficiency and consistency in terms of deliverables. But could we drill down a little bit further on sort of what are some of the pure KPIs that are being enabled by the digital connectivity in terms of this greater level of supply chain visibility?
So if we're thinking about the way that we are measured and the type of business that we're doing, I think the fundamental KPI is, are we delivering the shipments on time, in full, and of the right quality? So what is the data being able to do? First of all, it's being able to pinpoint, well, what was the actual transit time? So we now have a single source of truth in terms of what was the pickup, when did the flight depart, or when did the vessel leave the port. So in terms of that transit time, in terms of the on time in full, did we deliver it on time? So I would say that if we're looking back in time, there were many different ways of calculating that timeliness, the key KPI of performance. So are we now able to do it on time in full? And we all agree with a single source of truth. We mentioned, and I mentioned, sustainability earlier on. I think another KPI that is becoming increasingly important is what is the carbon footprint, what is the fuel load of all of the shipments that are moved. As we have more data, we're more able to closely align shipments with either specific trucks, with specific vessels, with specific airlines, and we will then know exactly the distances that have been flown, that have been driven, or have happened during the sea. So that means that the sustainability, the carbon footprint information is far more accurate than perhaps what it once was in the past. And then, as you say, there is the key KPI around cost. So we are able to make sure that we've got the real, true, accurate, real-time data in terms of how much are things costing. So have we made our commitments, first of all, in terms of the budget that has been set for this year, but also the savings that will take place over time. And then let's say the last one around the quality. So we've now got very clear information that is undisputed because it's the same information being used by all parties. Was that shipment successful? Was there a kappa associated with that shipment? So what is our complete overall quality performance rate? And if I add on to that the kappas, like, yes, there will be issues that don't quite go as they should do. Part of the GDP is to make sure that we're identifying those issues, and we are continuously improving. The data is allowing us to identify how many shipments have not performed to plan, what is the kappa performance, how quickly do we respond to those kappas, and is it a right first time high quality response?
I really want to thank you for that answer. That was a very comprehensive and helpful response, and it made me think back to maybe your days at AZ. Thinking at it from the customer's perspective, right? If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen, right? In the life sciences vertical.